Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great.
So
I'm excited about your talk, so I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much. So yes, as introduced very kindly by two of my colleagues there, my name is Ben Ingram. I'm the Employee Experience Practice Lead at Wongdoody. It's one of 4 practice areas that we focus on as a business. And I'm going to talk a little bit this evening about why the future of work is sustainable and what, as experience designers, we can really do to support that. Now, beginning with a slide that we're probably all familiar with, if not, can very much relate to. It's no surprise to any of us. It's the reason we're talking like this today. It's the reason I'm still yet to have a haircut. It's the reason I will highly likely look away from the camera at some point this evening to see what my puppy is destroying. But what I think we can all agree on is the impact of COVID has been as deep as it has been broad. And one of the areas that I think has been most affected is employee experience. Not just because of the ways it's forced organisations to change, but in the way it's challenged the very foundations of said organisations. Particularly as we begin to think about returning back to the office, organisations having to think about how their policy and process supports the rising demand for flexible working, amongst other things. And here on this slide, we're seeing just a few of the trends in the employee experience space, and important to recognise that none of these are necessarily new. There will be things on here that we will all be familiar with for a long time now. The increasing expectations of user experience design in professional products, consumerization of the workplace, and the penetration of technologies into it, and the new ways of working that are summed up by the way we're interacting today. But the piece I want to focus on today is the bottom half of this chart. And I think these are all fit under a theme of treating employees as humans. We are not just the number that comes to work 9 to 5 to fulfill a function. We are all asking of our employers that they consider us as humans and as individuals, each with our own needs, motivations, and preferred ways of working. And this is how we go about building employee experiences. We use this fairly simple framework, and our belief is that if you can balance the relationship between an employee and the business they work for across three pillars of purpose, value, and enablers, you will be creating a good employee experience. Purpose is the reason an organization exists, its mission statement, its vision. As an employee, it's the thing we associate with it. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's what excites us about going to work. Value is obviously the return we get for doing that. As an organisation, this is very much linked to the bottom line, obviously. For an employee, it's a portfolio of things. And interesting to think about value as an employee. Very different to when we're designing for consumers, where ultimately the relationship always is at least positioned to be of most benefit to the consumer. Whereas as an employee, we never truly get out what we put in, certainly when it comes to remuneration. I think we'd all be much happier if we could go home after a day of work with the same paycheck as the value of the deal we just struck at work. But unfortunately, obviously not the most sustainable of business models. So instead, we look for, like I said, a portfolio of rewards. Yes, there's financial remuneration, but more and more now there's also how we balance our work and life. There's ensuring that we're supported in our personal development as much as our professional. And then some basic fundamentals, like ensuring we have a safe and secure place to work. And then finally, with all that in place, a company that we believe in, one that rewards us for the effort we put in, it's about having all the correct enablers in place. Environments, both physical and digital, tools, services, and the support of other colleagues for us each to achieve and hopefully exceed our potential as an individual, and then collectively as a workforce, take the business in the direction it wants to go. There's a lot of things we could double click on here, but what I want to focus on today is sustainability, because it's something that comes up throughout this framework. And when we talk about sustainability, we look at the many forms it takes. You see environmental in the middle there is the one that I think historically we all lean towards when we think about sustainability. Obviously, we need to make sure that we're not harming our environment. There's also social and human. Social, ensuring that we have a diverse workforce. Human, in that we literally have a sustainable workforce. They are going to be happy, healthy. They are going to progress in the way we need them to. All to reap the rewards of it. It's slightly sensationalized, but environmental, that we quite literally have an earth to continue operating on and working on. Economically, support that thriving community. Thriving communities are fantastic, and more than thriving, diverse communities are fantastic for us. It means that we can hire a much broader set of applicants, and we can sell a more diverse set of products and services. And then finally, obviously, commercial, ensuring that as an organization, we can continue to operate. So a very simple formula in front of us. Sustainability is the impact you make over the time it is made. And I think we've always been led to believe in this kind of imagery. If we take more than we replenish, it is negative. If we take as much as we replenish, it is sustainable. And if we give back more than we take, it is positive. But I think we need to challenge this a little bit more, particularly as we think beyond environmental, and replace these with regression, stagnation, progress. Because if we think of that middle one, taking as much as, or giving back as much as we take, it only works in a perfect environment. It's ignorant of the fact that our environment, our community, our systems are constantly growing. If we think about social and diversity, for example, balancing that sustainability equation would mean staying in the same state we currently exist in, which I think we could probably all agree few organizations or few communities are doing perfectly. So what can we do to support the sustainability objectives of the organizations we work for and the clients we do work for? I think first of all, we have to recognize that the sustainable need is forever increasing over time. As the world changes, as the world grows, as economies grow, as technologies change, that need rises. So the first thing we can do is set policy. And this is what the consultants tend to come in and do. Policy is fantastic because it sets a guaranteed impact. We are going to remove single-use plastic from our campuses. We are only going to buy energy from a sustainable supply. Fantastic, but a small number of decisions in comparison to the broader picture we're going to look at, and ones which generate a set impact within the confines of our organization. So then we have process. Fantastic, because we get out of a process what we put into it, so we can continue to increase the amount we get out by increasing the effort, the investment we put into process. But I think as all of us working in experience design will recognize, process only works when it's followed, and people do tend to have a habit of not following process. So finally, there's people, and this is where we see the real opportunity to generate, like it says there, an exponential impact. And this is for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it's because it's 24/7. Fantastic if we bring people to work in a completely sustainable environment with no single-use plastic, with renewable energies. Slightly scuppered if they then choose to drive home in their Ford F-150. But it also looks at the microtransactions or small decisions that people make on a day-to-day basis and the cumulative impact that we have there. So I think about this very much in terms of marginal gains and the way it was applied to the Team GB Olympic cycling team just ahead of London 2012, recognizing that the sum of all the small decisions we make in life add up to something truly transformational. And here are just a few examples of how that works across those three different pillars of human, environmental, and social. And interestingly, actually things that we as an organization have had to discover, trial over the past year or so. One of the ones I quite like in here is the human piece, and I'm sure we all probably relate to this. At the policy level, we offered everyone some budget to purchase appropriate equipment for them to set up a home working environment so people could sit up straighter and had somewhere healthy to work in. From a process perspective, we said that every 2 hours over lunchtime, 11 till 1, would be blocked for people to get out, go for a walk, get some fresh air and get some important time away from the screen. I'm sure we can all probably understand how long that lasted before it started getting infringed upon. And then finally, there's people. So we started we gamified health and well-being, brought everyone onto a step tracking app set some challenges, put people against one another, created a community around this, and saw instant return on this. And actually one of the best set of results we had from all the health and well-being trials we made over the past year. And then you can see there with environmental and social, again, how, yes, we can put policy and process in place, but actually it's only when we change human behavior, it's only when we engage people in that change that we truly see the maximum impact of those decisions. So experience being the opportunity area, I thought it's important to define what we mean when we say employee experience. On the left-hand side there, in the hierarchy of this message, is really important, I think. Transformation of organisation, its tools to best suit employees. Now, in an ideal world, you wouldn't need the last two lines of the sentence. We should always be designing for the world our users currently inhabit, which today happens to be digital, or I should say, primarily digital, as we do see a rise in people wanting to move away from the screen after a long day of Zoom or Teams calls. But the message here, and the important one, is that it's not just digitization of tools and services for the sake of it. Digital in and of itself is not the answer. The answer lies in the way that we apply it. So with that in mind, I'm going to explore 6 design principles that we have found effective and we believe, if deployed properly into an organization, can really help affect positive behavioral change in support of sustainable objectives. So first being human-centricity, human-centric design. This is something we as an organization, and I'm sure many of the organizations that everyone here tonight works for, has worked for previously, aspires to follow. Ensuring that we're creating something rooted in human insight, the ideal solution for the human, whether they be employees, applicants, partners, and suppliers. Only then looking at which technology is going to enable that solution, making sure they're validated within the architecture of the organization we're working with, and that they're going to provide us with the longevity required. And then on that point of longevity, coaching that business to ensure that they correctly adopt the solution, they onboard people, and they are constantly evolving it, taking on feedback from their users. That in and of itself is how we foster sustainability into the work we're doing. The second is unification. I think we're going to see more and more of this. As organizations become more fragmented, as people start to work more flexibly, we're going to have to turn to digital platforms to unite and unify people. So really important that no matter where I work, no matter what I do, I'm able to access a single platform that not only provides me with all the tools and services I need, but also connects me with the rest of the organization, no matter where I am, what I'm doing, what time it is, how I choose to access. The third is inclusivity, and you'll have to forgive me, this is the most self-serving strategy slide I have. I think when we think about inclusivity, we are often drawn towards point solutions, inevitably something that includes AI or blockchain in the title. And whilst they do some fantastic things, they are not without their pitfalls. So I think more importantly, we need to bring inclusivity back to its foundations when we're designing experiences. And that's where the image in the middle, the Tower of Babel, really kind of inspired a thought in my mind, because depending on how much faith you put in any given book, this was the first time that communities, plural, were really formed. And they were formed because people lacked the ability to communicate with one another all of a sudden, or to understand one another all of a sudden, and even engage in a joint experience. So I think this is where we should start on the conversation around inclusivity, ensuring that everyone in our organization, communities and groups has freedom to access that experience via their own chosen medium, and the ability to engage through their preferred language. I think not doing this as our foundation stone is in itself non-inclusive before we get to any of those more innovative point solutions. Forward personalisation, and I'm sure personalisation is something we're all thinking about. Hyper-personalisation, definitely looking to be one of the next major trends in both the work we do for consumers and employees. So rooted in the understanding of the individual user, not as a persona, not as a single set character who doesn't change over time, but someone who lives in their own reality, whose behaviours, whose preferences, whose actions change based on what they're doing and where they are. Being able to serve tailored experiences to them in real time, adapting them based on the performance of that experience that we've served to them. Now, in theory, fantastic, I'm sure we can all agree, would lead to better experiences, but we're starting to see technologies emerge that can do this, rooted in computational design. So we're seeing here a very basic example of how we can personalize a simple transaction, like a manager approving a request for leave from someone from their team. And what you'll notice here is when we talk about personalization, we're not just personalizing content, a little like you might see on Netflix, for example, where it's a set framework, we're simply moving content around or variations of. Here we're changing the experience at the UX layer. We're changing the format of it, we're changing the structure of it based on the type of person who is completing this journey. So you see the default experience on the left-hand side. Next to it, someone who's a dependent decision maker. They like to have suggestions. They like to be reassured that they're making the right decision. So we give them that information, we humanize the experience, we give them the suggested next best action. Next, that's someone with a high need for cognition, someone very visual. Would likely measure this because we see what else they spend time on. This is the person who opens up all the charts, who likes to include a lot of visuals in the work they're doing. So we again show the information to them that way. Now on the right-hand side, someone we know who's incredibly self-directed. They don't like to be told what to do. They like to make their own decisions. So we're giving them all the key information in as short time as possible, and then providing them with the flexibility to make a decision about what they want to do next. Fifth is transparency, and this is in some ways the easiest thing or the easiest principle to take into the design work we're doing, but most often the first thing to get left out. We have to ask ourselves, answer these questions as we design. Why are we asking you, the user, to do this? What's the benefit of it? And then what are we going to do with it? Take the users on that journey, which speaks to the next point I'm going to make, which is around measurability. We can bring people together, we can affect behavioral change, we can make progress by collecting people in shared success. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see a fairly simple interaction, or not. Try that one again. So on the left-hand side, we're seeing a simple, fairly low-fidelity wireframe for a carpooling feature in a connected workspace app. So our users go through here, they're going to travel in a few days, and they're given their options. You see each option has a star rating. That star rating reflects the positive impact of the decision they're making. And you can imagine this can be rolled out across any number of experiences in something like this, picking the meeting room that is in a part of the building that has already been lit, has already been heated, making a more healthy decision for what you're going to have lunch today. It's educating within the experience, and it's giving us the opportunity, like you see on the right-hand side, to communicate that individual and share success. So starting to pit teams, whether they be based on business unit, project team, geography, against one another in terms of who's making the most positive set of decisions, which team's behaviours are most benefiting to the organisation, the environment, and the community around them. And with that, I will pause there. Like I said, these are the foundations of our playbook, as it were, that we take into experience design when we're looking to drive not just sustainable behaviours, but really affect any behaviour in a positive sense. And hopefully something that you guys can take into the work you're doing. Thank you very much for listening.
Hey, Ben, thanks so much. That was a really great overview and such a new and interesting perspective. I think sometimes in our industry, we take for granted how spoiled we are when it comes to employee experience. I think in the tech industry, we've always had access to decent tools in comparison to other sectors. And maybe there's been a bit more of an emphasis on employee culture in our industry. So you mentioned in the very beginning, at the very first slide, that COVID has really changed this. Like what are some specific trends that you've seen, and like in terms of industries that are picking this up, and how promising is this for employees who work in more like traditional sectors, who, you know, like the non-tech sector?
So there's probably two questions in there in terms of what we've seen accelerate and what has COVID in itself really impacted. Mm-hmm. And I think the really interesting stuff is around what COVID has impacted. I can speak for what I found really interesting in the UK is a think tank have just finished a piece of research that challenges some of the employment laws we have in the country. Historically, the need to work flexibly because you had parenting commitments wasn't something that an organisation necessarily needed to consider. The work that this think tank has done have assessed the way that law has been written and referenced the past year and how organisations have been able to adapt to flexible working to show that people can in fact work from home. And their belief is that moving forwards, organisations will not be able to deny a request for flexible working based on your parenting commitments.
That's fantastic, and that is a beautiful outcome. Yeah, I think that's like a hidden impact that COVID had that we never really expected, to have it really reorganize family policy in general. Just there was also a very specific question about the interface that you showed, where it has sort of like 4 different interfaces based on the mental model of the user and how they make decisions and what kind of information they need to be able to make a decision. I think this is amazing because as UX designers, we've constantly been trying to solve for finding the compromise and then, you know, or catering to the most and then creating deviations for the niche cases. And it's just a constant struggle. So I'm wondering, like, for me, this kind of flips that on the head, where you're saying, like, we don't have to make choices anymore about like what causes the most conversion. Like, we can really offer everything. But I guess I'm curious, like, how did you acquire the information to be able to map that mental model? Did you just ask them in a wizard, or is this sort of like you learn it from their behaviors? How do you?
Yeah. So the approach for delivering those experiences begins with a survey of approximately 1,000 employees. And that survey is based on one of the many kind of mental model surveys you can find out there. It's about developing a psychographic model for the employees in your organisation. That's used to set, not quite, I'd even say the foundation, but almost a set of A/B test scenarios that are then deployed to the rest of the users, and we start monitoring the feedback we get from them. So if we're rendering an experience that is for someone who is more visual or more analytical, are we seeing a better response from them? Are we seeing faster task time completion? Are they spending more time on the information or the content or the modules we believe they would spend more time on because of their characteristics? If so, we can lean towards that. If not, we can go back and readdress that. But the key to that, and I think what's going to be really interesting, is that more of our time is going to be spent understanding the users and understanding the behaviours that trigger a change in experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And I suppose with employees, you have a bit of a captive audience. You do have the luxury of kind of getting those survey results, or even having it be part of your onboarding process, which is fantastic. I wonder if how that might translate into the real world. But I suppose at this point we have these massive data lakes. I mean, it feels like we should be able to start putting together these types of mental model profiles or these personality profiles that will lend to this in the future. So I'm quite I'm quite inspired by that. It would be really nice to be able to design kind of like 3 versions of the same flow based on how people want to consume information and make decisions. It's really cool. There's a bug in my face. Okay, so thank you, Ben. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Very interesting work that's going on.
Okay.
And if anyone has questions or just wants to chat with Ben about the work that he's been doing or anything else, there's going to be a special session for him set up so that you can join and have a chat with him. So go ahead and look for that in the sessions. I'm going to go ahead and put us on a break until 8 o'clock. We ended a little bit early. So you have about 20 minutes to refresh your drink. You can join the networking section. You can come join us in a session and have a chat or go talk with Ben about his talk. And then we'll meet back here at the stage at 8 o'clock for the next talk about curse words, it looks like. See you back then. Bye-bye.